The morning after, the table was the same table. The harbor ledger was on it. The small notebook was not. She had put it in the bag under the bed the night before, and the absence of it from the table was the first thing she registered when she sat down. It was the size of a missing thing. Not large, but specific. She opened the harbor ledger to the page she had abandoned 3 days ago. She picked up the pen. She wrote the entry for today's date, the catch weights from the morning board, 2 new names she had identified in the quota structure, a note on the timing of the license review scheduled for the following week. She wrote all of this without difficulty. The pen moved the way it had always moved. The ink dried the way it had always dried. The ledger received everything she put into it and asked nothing about what had happened outside its pages. She sat back and looked at what she had written. This was the thing she had needed to verify. The ledger was clean because it belonged entirely to the mandate. Nothing in it had been redirected. Nothing had been used as a container for something the mandate had not specified. The entries were what they said they were. She had wondered, sitting at the basin last night, whether that would still be possible in the morning, whether the selection she had made would contaminate the adjacent material. It had not. The ledger was the ledger. The primary target was still the primary target. She was going to approach him now from the mandate's direction, clean, without anything underneath that needed a different name. She had done this before, in the first weeks. She had done it with 3 names already on the list. She knew what it felt like. What she did not know, what she was going to have to find out, was whether the knowing of the other thing, the having done it, would change what the clean version felt like from the inside. That was the question she carried into the rest of the day. Not a moral question, a technical one. She was experienced enough with instruments to know that using them outside their purpose changes them in ways that are not always visible until you try to use them for the original purpose again. She closed the ledger. She went to work. The voice was the thing she had been saving for this. Not saving in the sense of preserving. She had used it throughout the 11 weeks, in careful increments, the way you use a precision tool on material that will not forgive overreach. What she had been saving was the specific register of it that she had kept directed away from the one place she had known since the 2nd week it most wanted to go. At the dock, the night with the rival, she had used it as a finality, aimed at a specific result. The result had been produced. This was different. This time, standing in the harbor at the hour when the light was going and the evening work was beginning, she let it go where she had been keeping it from going for 11 weeks. She was not performing. That was the distinction she registered immediately, that there was a distinction available to register at all. Every previous use had been directed. The right register, the right duration, the right target. This had none of that. She spoke to him, not to the door she needed open, not to the mechanism behind the door, to the person standing in front of it, who had been standing there since the first night on the pier, with the specific quality of someone who had organized his life around a permanent weight and would not put it down. The harbor moved around them. The evening boats came in. She felt the voice find the frequency it had always known was there. Not the frequency of manipulation, which works on what a person fears, but the frequency of something else, something she had not designed it for, and was using it for anyway. The prince stopped walking. He turned. For 3 days, she let herself believe it was working. She sat at the window in the mornings, with the harbor below her, the boats going out, the boards being updated, the coffee in the cup on the table going cold, while she watched the pier and did not open the ledger. The light came in at a different angle than it had for 11 weeks. She noticed this. It was the same window, the same harbor, the same morning light. The difference was not in the light. The prince was not in love with her. She was clear about this. He was drawn to her, genuinely, in a way that was partly the voice and partly something she chose to believe was not only the voice. He still carried his weight. It had not left him, but it had shifted, the way she had watched it shift on the pier when the old dock worker told him the eastern grounds had gone quiet, and he had said, "Put it in the report anyway," and the dock worker had left, and the prince had stayed looking at the water with the same face he always had, but with something slightly more deliberate in it. That was the thing she had filed without a category in the second week. A man who knows the cost of what he has inherited and cannot fix it, but chooses, in the smallest way available to him, to register that he knows. It was not absolution. She had been clear about that then. She was clear about it now. But it was specific. It was the kind of specific thing that makes a person harder to hold at the distance required by a mandate, because the mandate requires a name on a list, and what she had accumulated over 11 weeks was something with considerably more detail than a name. She let herself have 3 days. She understood that she was doing this. She was not confused about what she was doing, or why it was possible now in a way it had not been before. The version she had built in the basin had held through the night and through the morning and through 3 mornings after that. The selection had remained stable. She was carrying it without difficulty. This was what had made the 3 days possible. Not that anything had resolved itself, but that the weight of the unresolved thing had found its distribution, and she had found she could move with it. 3 days was not nothing. She had not had 3 days before. She held them carefully, the way you hold something you know is temporary, but choose not to qualify while you are inside it. Her sister surfaced on the 4th night. The tide was going out. The Siren had come to the waterline without planning to. She had been walking the harbor perimeter, as she sometimes did in the evenings now, and had arrived at the rocks without deciding to arrive there. The water came up over the stones and receded, and the cold of it reached her feet through the thin soles of her shoes with each movement. The harbor sounds, voices from the tavern, rigging, the low knock of boats against the dock pilings, came from behind her, continuing in the ordinary way of surfaces that do not register what happens at their edges. Her sister did not come ashore. She held at the waterline, the upper part of her visible, the water moving around her the way it moves around something that belongs in it.